Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. I would like to appeal to everybody in essentially a state of international emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, as far as I can tell, we are now at war. We are at war against an organization, a construction that has infested most of our institutions, public institutions and even private institutions. Essentially, as far as I can tell, a lot of the criminality that is mutilating and maiming children and women, mostly, but also many, many men, is essentially being enabled and is emanating from the intelligence agencies. As far as I can tell, these intelligence agencies have essentially fused internationally. They are one. This phenomenon is already familiar to people who work in finance. In finance, it's already known that the banks are actually interconnected. The central banks are essentially all one and are steered by the Bank of International Settlement here in Switzerland. And in the financial realm, people talk about the one bank. You can find articles about this, and this is now open in the public. As far as the intelligence agencies are concerned, I think we're also dealing with a situation where we have essentially the one agency. And it stretches the globe. That is why it's using the same methods in all countries. The intelligence agencies stopped being accountable to their own governments, as it seems a long, long time ago, in secret, under the cover of secrecy, and with, I think, entirely made-up pretenses of national security issues. They have usurped more and more power and have infested more and more parts of our society. I have put out videos on systems analysis, on the very, very basics of systems analysis of complex human systems that should allow absolutely everybody to understand what I'm saying here. I have explained how capture comes about in an organization, how you can have entire domains, captured domains, and domains of actual integrity in the same organization, and how deep capture is actually a natural phenomenon that occurs naturally in many organizations. And if we're not careful, that is the end state. Capture, deep capture by criminals, by the corrupt, or by psychopaths. In a sense, the organizations we have today are all pyramid organizations. And as Paul Marco, an organizational psychologist with over 30 years of experience, very aptly put it, pyramid organizations are essentially psychopath magnets. The psychopaths accumulate at the top. And this is what we're dealing with. We're essentially dealing with deep capture that affects essentially all of our public institutions by now. And it's worse than that. It is more like deep captured organizations that are amongst themselves networked at the top, creating superstructures of deep capture and utter boundless psychopathology. So in fighting this, we have to look for signs of psychopathology. We have to know the actual methods and the subversive elements that are typical for psychopathology, the total lack of empathy, the prolific lying, the deception, the ruthlessness, and the maiming and the murder. These are essentially telltale signs of psychopathology. Brutal threats, threat-based, dominance-based approaches, and a total and utter lack of empathy and respect for human values. That is psychopathology. And when we have deep capture by psychopathology, this toxic culture infects entire sections of our organization, sometimes entire organizations. This culture can be imprinted also on people who are not psychopathic. They can be forced to go along, and this is what we're dealing with. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a situation of war, because the secret services have declared war on our public institutions. They have grown so powerful, they have now declared war. The balance of powers has been entirely annulled in our organizations due to their secrecy, due to the absolutely astronomical amounts of funding that the intelligence agencies have had always had and have recently procured in what's called the war on terror, which personally I refer to as the war of terror. For example, the MI5 budget doubled. This is something, and this is after 2003. This is absolutely unprecedented in its history. And I believe that other intelligence agencies have undergone the same. But essentially, it is by these clandestine means, by the means of subversion, sabotage, infiltration, deception, maiming, and covert murder even, that our public organizations have been taken over. There was a silent coup. And now what follows is an all-out war. And I can show you evidence of the intelligence agencies declaring open war on our civil institutions and on our private people, on innocent people. And my personal example of this open declaration of war is essentially being attacked by an unmarked, which to me looked like a military helicopter, next to German intelligence on top of my own, on the rooftop terrace of my own home. I was irradiated by crowd control weapons there, brutally. I hadn't done anything. I was in my own private space, and I was nevertheless assaulted, demonstratively assaulted by these, what I would call utter degenerate psychopaths. Also, my medical care was infiltrated. That is a declaration of war, because our medical care should be sacrosanct. Our private space should be sacrosanct. Our health and our life should be sacrosanct for these people. If it's not, it means they have declared war on us. And this is the sad situation. MI5 has declared open war on the rule of law in the UK when they shot me in the back of the head after my first High Court hearing, when I desperately requested an emergency injunction from the judge. They shot me in the head even before the notification, the official notification, has reached them. They already shot me in the head. They behaved abysmally after that as well. They have tortured me, they have mutilated me, demonstratively mutilated me after that. German intelligence again reinforced their declaration of war when they openly, after I sent them a request to cease and desist, which I assumed was a legal requirement, they have openly mutilated me on a plane. They have damaged my hip, and on the flight back they've even shown me a picture of my father, indicating that yes, they are tracking my entire family, having no regard for the right of a private life, right to life, my right to health. And my right to privacy is long gone out of the window. We are now in this stage where these organizations have declared open war. Now, there's also public documentation. For example, the Polish Minister of Defense at the press conference has confirmed that victims of electromagnetic irradiation exist in the country. Apparently it took the man, not the man, but the Ministry of Defense 6 months, and I still haven't heard any results to actually find out where these people are. This is ludicrous, given that these people are mostly on Twitter and Facebook. You can find that out in an afternoon when you've got the means of the Ministry of Defense. But if it takes that long, and if it's really systematic irradiation that has gone on for years and it was reported over even social media publicly, and the intelligence agencies tasked with fighting terror have not stopped it, it means it is them. And then it is an open declaration of war. They have already created casualties in this war. But what they're doing is a war crime. They are running a war on civilians. This is a war crime. They are clandestinely murdering people, maiming people and murdering people in their own home with covert methods, with bioterrorism, infecting people and irradiating them with military microwave weapons. And they rely on the fact that we do not know how these weapons work. It's very difficult to actually prove them, to track them down and find the source. It takes expert knowledge. One has to be lucky, one has to check the right frequency, and they can switch the frequency at any time. And whilst we're trying to actually prove these crimes, they are watching us non-stop. They're watching every single one of our moves, and essentially we can only detect it if they let us. In the case of electromagnetic weapons. And then when you turn off your measuring device, they can always turn on the beam. They can shoot into you at night. They can cripple you at night. And that's what they demonstrate openly on the victims. Well, this is not just a declaration of war. It's already war, and it's already a war crime. But we know who's doing it. So this is what we're dealing with. And essentially what I'm now saying to every victim of the intelligence agencies, and this in my view also includes the people who suffered from child sex abuse, the people who suffer from child sex abuse now, from organized child sex abuse. And that's because this problem was so prolific, was so systematic. It's terrorism, it's mutilation, it's essentially crimes against humanity. If the organization tasked with fighting terrorism has not done anything about this for decades, it is because they are involved. So you are also victims of this war. And what I'm now saying to absolutely everybody is, we all have to come together to fight this. We all have to come together because the war has already been declared and the war is already ongoing. The only difference is, are you already a casualty or not yet? And like in every war, ignoring it will not make it stop faster. It will not protect your life, because what we're dealing with is essentially also clandestine means by which our food supply is being poisoned, it's being actively subverted, actively infected with things that will then be used to be activated in us, to bring us down, to destroy our health, our mental capabilities, our abilities, our financial income and everything. If you don't believe me, that large organizations would pull that off, please refer to the financial crisis and see how entire nations have been brought to their knees with financial terrorism. And now we're talking about physical terrorism. So imagine just how crippling that is. So, we are at war, ladies and gentlemen. We are all at war. And we should have picked up on the signs a lot earlier than we have. But we are now at war. And this has strong parallels to the wars we've seen previously, which started with the rounding up of the people of high integrity. It started with the maiming and murder of priests, the last Second World War that we had. These were all precursors. It started with absolutely reckless, arrogant, hypocritical behavior from the law enforcement and the intelligence agencies. It went on to careless intrusions into homes, into damage and the actual taking of property. Well, we have that now these days, gentlemen. I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we have now arrived at that stage. What the Gestapo did, we now have that in all European countries and the US and Australia, as I've heard. We now have that. And here we go again. Exactly the same. And why is it the same? Because it always follows the same pattern. When we have deep capture by criminal psychopaths always do the same, which is to start to maim people for fun and murder them, just as the ultimate step of their power. That is the sad truth. Those are the values of psychopathology. We have our set of values and they have theirs. But these are sick, sick minds. These are very ill people. They appear highly functional, but they're actually not. They are very, very sick people. And essentially what we have is an outright war by the psychopathic and degenerate elements in our society who have networked themselves. All the corrupt and psychopathic people seem to be in one big organization. They found themselves by following their interests, ever more power, subverting others, maiming and mutilating others. They have created, essentially clubs in which they tortured, maimed and mutilated and killed children. And this is how they recognize each other. Because psychopaths will seek that out. The maiming, the torture and murder of the weakest. And these are children, disabled people and women. to the most degree, and also vulnerable men who are isolated, and so on and so on. And when these people gang together, we are all vulnerable. We have gangs of psychopaths roaming our democracies. And they are using their friends in the pharma industry, mostly men actually, equal bent in the arms industry and the secret services, and they are subverting more and more people. But it's not exclusively male, but the male element and the male aggression has a large part to play in this. And yes, the secret societies are involved. And why? It's because secrecy is used by psychopaths to attract essentially gullible men, to attack, to basically pull in gullible, stupid, impressionable men that they use as their enablers. They brainwash them, they tell them how they are working for a higher cause, how they have to swear oaths, how they have to reach higher and higher levels and show their worthiness. And they use the fact that men, actually internally hierarchical, will respond to this, and a lot of men will fall for this. And they organize them into groups, into secret societies. They give them levels and hierarchies that people can climb and derive false sense of honor and a false sense of status from that. And this is what all these clandestine organizations have in common. The secret societies and the secret services are one. They are all psychopath magnets. They are deep capture machines. And that's the end state. At the top, there are psychopaths who spin the story ever further, who create ever more outlandish stories to tell their enablers, to bamboozle them, to draw them in. They'll have their symbolisms, their robes and all that, and they will use that to razzle-dazzle people, to essentially enable the psychopath to do what a psychopath actually wants to do, which is control everybody and decide who they want to maim and murder. And that is the natural state of psychopathology. And I remind everybody that the last numbers I checked, psychopaths make up between 1 to 5% of our societies. So overall, we have a staggering large number of psychopaths. And never before in the history have we ever found a way to actually actively manage them. So far we have not. But if you combine that with pyramid organizations, you have a disaster in the making that will end in the maiming and murder of very large numbers of people. And the Nazis showed that to be the case, the Stasi showed that to be the case, the communist system showed that to be the case. And the mechanism was always the same. In all of these systems, the Secret Service played an absolutely overbearing role. Because that's the real psychopath magnets. Those are the people who are professional saboteurs, professional con artists. They are professionals in deception, subversion, and murder. And that's what we're dealing with. Yet again, we have a war which is essentially started by the degenerates in our society via the intelligence agencies. They have more power than they ever had. They can not just access our flats and our homes anywhere in the world, every hotel room we go and stay in. They also access our computers, all our communications, digital, via email, via phone, and even the ones spoken in the street and spoken in our homes. And they access them all for the first time in history. But more than that, they can also access our actual bodily functionalities through electromagnetic weapons. They can control those too. And yes, there are indications that they can also control our neurological functioning using electromagnetic weapons. They can interfere with our brains, they can slow us down, they can shoot into our brains, actually degrade us, and they can do whatever they like. And these people have yet once more declared war on us. And I can see that my video is slowing down. I mean, the audio and the video track always gets delayed. And now I can actually see live how someone is interfering with my computer, because as I'm recording this, I can see how the video is being slowed down artificially. So that is the truth now. They are in my computers, on my computers, non-stop. I experience non-stop hacking. Just last week I had another break-in. Again, one of my measuring devices, well, in that case not again in terms of the, it was again a break-in, and this time a measuring device was stolen. But these are acts of war. Also, they truncate our communication systems, which are acts of war. And I want you all to understand that if a social media profile is taken offline, that is an act of war. It is an act of war against civil society. Only if this person is actually reported in front of a judge and the judge makes the decision that this person's right to free speech should be withdrawn, only then is it right and proper. But what we see now is that some random IT companies take the right to censor people's right to free speech, who discriminate people based on their opinion, their political opinions. That is not right, and it is an act of war by this cartel. We now have high-profile scientists, doctors, lawyers being shot to pieces inside their own home with microwave weapons, having their brain functionality interfered with, having literally being, having honey traps set up to entrap them, have their marriages destroyed, their genuine marriages destroyed, to be replaced with honey traps and infiltrators. We have their right to free speech subverted and sabotaged, their computing equipment sabotaged, their neurological functionality sabotaged. This is all-out war. This is all-out war. And unfortunately, we all have to rise to win this war, to get back to the saner world we had just a few years ago, before this madness went absolutely rampant. And this time, we're not going to give in to the divide and conquer that has been pulled off by this cartel so many times. We shall not be divided according to race lines, or religion, or economic income, or educational background, or even political opinions. No, because this is way beyond political opinions. This is the most fundamental human right to free speech, a right to life, a right to private life, a right to family life, a right to privacy. And all of these are being infringed. And with the microwave weapons, directly our right to life. So I want you all to understand that what we're dealing with here is criminal deep capture, criminal infiltration, criminal subversion of our public institutions, all of our public institutions. We're dealing with systematic mutilations, premeditated mutilations and murder committed by the intelligence agencies and many of their cronies. Sometimes contractors, sometimes private contractors, sometimes hospitals. They're operatives in hospitals and they're infiltrators in hospitals. Sometimes in private medical practices. Sometimes even in lawyers' offices, and so on and so on. Every aspect of our society is being subverted by these, because they have declared war and they are waging war on us. And there's only two things that are going to save us, in my view. Number one, it is the mathematics of networks. We have to spread this information out. Everybody has to understand what's going on. Everybody has to be on the same page. Actually, in the army, this is called situational awareness. You have to be aware of the situation. You have to be aware that our media has been sabotaged. This is again sabotaging the communication channels. The social media platforms are being sabotaged in a sense that people's accounts are being shut down. And I keep saying only a judge has the right to actually withdraw somebody's right to free speech and curtail it. Because even a judge can't actually withdraw the right to free speech. But curtail it. And they do not involve a judge. So when social media platforms are shut down, that is an act of war. It is whoever does that declaring war on the rule of law and on our justice systems. Whoever's breaking into private homes, who's ever ganging up on people to cause psychological pressure, psychological terrorism, whoever manipulates car radios, does damage to private property, steals private property in a premeditated fashion, as part of this organization, has declared war on our civil societies. Whoever, as a doctor, infects people with things, gives them compounds or any bioorganisms that they shouldn't, commits a crime against humanity. Anybody who tries to interfere with a human brain's mental functioning, more certainly when it's non-consensual, commits literally a crime against humanity. And whoever maims and mutilates the weakest in society and relies on the fact that they do not maybe have the educational background to figure out fast enough what is happening to them, do not have the social connections to get in touch with somebody powerful who can protect them, whoever also withdraws money from the most needy in our society, the disabled, those people are committing crimes against humanity. Whoever is raping and torturing children and killing them is committing a crime against humanity. And whoever is organizing and facilitating these crimes is committing a crime against humanity. And crimes against humanity do not have a limitation period. So war has been declared, ladies and gentlemen, and we all have to take up arms. But we will not fight a violent war here, because we can't. We will fight a silent administrative war in return. That's what we are going to fight. We are going to reclaim our institutions. We are going to recapture our captured organizations, as I explained. And we're going to reclaim the rule of law. We're going to remove the corrupt judges, the corrupt lawyers, the corrupt police officers, and the corrupted doctors and scientists, and all the other people who subverted our society, and we're going to put back genuine people of integrity into those places. But we all need to work together for that. We all have to ensure the integrity of our systems. And this doesn't matter what our income is, our ethnic background, our religion, right? Our educational background, nothing matters. No qualities about us matter. We all have to ensure that this is happening. And we all have to help each other explain what's happening, understand what is happening, and act against what is happening. It is our civic duty. Yes, we do have a civic duty. Because for so long, we all let it be. We didn't keep a tab on people, a very close tab. Instead of coming home from work and watching television that essentially, as far as I can tell, psychopaths have created to bamboozle us, we should have all discussed, kept a tab of what's going on. It's much more refreshing, much more invigorating than watching television. It really is. And it is much more required for us to live safely, because now we're not living safely anymore. Now, not a single person on this planet is safe anymore, because we have all neglected each other. And meanwhile, psychopaths have networked. Psychopaths have done everything in their means to connect, to link up with others, to smear them with bribes, bamboozle them. And they have now formed a truly powerful network. So we have only two things that save us. Number one is the mathematics of complex networks as we have it through the internet, because their information spreads highly non-linearly. And we can get in touch with people that before we couldn't. We just have to get one message out. Only one message, no matter how much censorship there is, we have to get messages to people. That's number one. Number two, and this is something that yesterday I was discussing with Paul Marco, this organizational psychologist with over 30 years experience. He told me that with his over 30 years experience, if there's one thing that can beat pyramid organizations, it is decentralized, autonomous groups of small people, united under a common cause. And we were discussing how essentially if you form little groups of maybe 2 up to 12 people, already 12 might be too much. But if you form small groups and you set yourself one goal, you are unbeatable. The big pyramid cannot compete in speed, in performance at all. And this is how we have to fight the war. People have tried, victim organizations, to organize into victim groups, and the intelligence agencies have weaseled themselves in, subverted it, infiltrated the top, and subverted the entire actions. So we will not have leaders now. You are all your own leaders. You know what to do. You recognize bullshit when you see it. You recognize crimes when you see them. So please get on the case. And this is essentially what we're going to do. We are going to fight this war now in an administrative way. We will not protest, because I'm telling you, they have set all their weapons up so that we protest, that we do the usual thing of get together in big groups and have leaders which they can assassinate. We'll not do that anymore. There will be no leaders. You be your own leader. And there will be no central organization of anything. The only goal is to stop the crime, to weed out the corrupt officials, to return to the rule of law, to recapture organizations, to stop hospitals from infecting us, subverting us, and using our trust to essentially run human experimentation on us. To stop the weapons industry testing their weapons on us. And so on and so on. And meanwhile, we'll help each other, we'll help the weakest people, we'll help the disabled, the children, and we're going to repair. This is essentially the mission. We have to fight the crime, stop corruption, and undo all the harm that they did. We have to repair our society. And we will come up with our own individual ideas of how to do it. And no one is told anything. No one is told how to do it. There are ideas and suggestions which I encourage you to share, but otherwise you're all on your own. And I encourage you, make it up as you go along. Talk to people, get inspiration, get creative, put your voice out there, and if you find something that works, share it so that we can amplify. And don't worry about infiltration. Don't worry about them controlling our communication channels, because as William Binney said, these people are overwhelmed by the data that they're pulling. They are overwhelmed. They cannot see an inch from their nose because of the data that they're being inundated with. So I want you all to generate data. Tweet it, make videos, talk about it, blog about it, text, write WhatsApp messages, any sort of messages and platforms that you can spread this on, please do. These people will be utterly inundated. They will not know what to do. And keep trying things out, keep changing direction until you actually get to success. Become unpredictable, and let's move towards higher and higher integrity. Work with whoever is actually good working with, and judge them based on what they do for you. Not who they are, what their standing is. Judge them based on what do they do to actually get you further, to eliminate crime, to get back to societies of high integrity. This is what we're going to do. And these are the only two things that can save us. As I'm speaking, I repeatedly get shot in the head from my neighbors with powerful, very, very painful microwave beams. I just received a shot as I finished my last sentence. I am being neurologically degraded. But for me, this means that I have to get the information out. You can see how my video is being slowed down. The audio track is no doubt also stretched. I am being subverted at every turn. And this is why I'm throwing the volleyball to you now, and you take it further. You just received from me the volleyball, and I pass it to you, and you do something with it. In my next video, I'll explain how I think we should fight this war. I'll make suggestions, and I put out an appeal to victims, but it will not be a command. I'm not a leader. I'm making suggestions, and you follow them if you think that they make sense and they help you. And if you've got better ideas, I would be honored if you would actually let me know. But otherwise, run your decentralized systems. You also don't have to tell me everything. You can run it completely decentralized. But if we keep each other informed, maybe we can work towards it, but we don't have to. Totally autonomous, self-organizing units. Get to work with the people you know. We have to investigate these crimes. This is essentially a citizen investigation again. And this is what we're going to do. But ladies and gentlemen, we are at war, and it's time to pick sides. Thank you.